Across the world, hidden behind headlines and diplomatic silence, entire nations are quietly falling apart. Not from war alone, but from something far more disturbing. Economies are crumbling, governments are vanishing, and millions are being plunged into chaos as currencies lose value, food disappears, and law and order disintegrate. These aren't distant, forgotten corners of the planet. They're modern societies unraveling in real time. How did once stable nations reach the brink? And could the same fate await others? What you're about to see isn't just a warning. It's a glimpse into what happens when a country begins to die from within. Starting at number 5, we have Sri Lanka, once known as a tropical paradise. Sri Lanka is now a cautionary tale of economic collapse in 2022. The island nation faced its worst financial crisis since independence. The country defaulted on its debt for the first time in history. Why? A deadly combination of unsustainable borrowing, a crippled tourism sector post-COVID, and misguided agricultural policies. The Rajapaksa government banned chemical fertilizers overnight, plunging crop yields by over 40%, and forcing the country to import food it could no longer afford at its peak. Inflation in Sri Lanka soared above 70%, making daily necessities like milk, rice, and fuel almost unaffordable. The currency, the Sri Lankan rupee, lost over 80% of its value. In less than a year, protesters stormed the presidential palace in July 2022, forcing President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee the country. Hospitals ran out of medicine power, outages became the norm. Even schools shut down due to lack of fuel. Today, Sri Lanka is surviving on a $2.9 billion IMF bailout, but recovery is painfully slow. Nearly half the population is struggling to meet basic food needs. Unemployment remains high, and foreign investors have fled. Sri Lanka's collapse wasn't sudden. It was a slow, avoidable burn made worse by corruption, poor leadership, and global instability. It's a warning sign for other fragile economies, and a stark reminder that no nation is immune from collapse when leadership fails. Number 4, Pakistan. Pakistan stands on the brink of a severe economic and political collapse, and the world is watching with growing concern. This isn't just any nation. It's a nuclear-armed country with a population exceeding 240 million and one of the largest military forces globally. Yet today, its government is barely operational, inflation is soaring, and millions of citizens are overwhelmed by uncertainty. In 2023, inflation surged to a record-breaking 38%, making basic necessities like food and fuel unaffordable for the average person. The Pakistani rupee plummeted, losing nearly half its value within a year. Daily life has become a struggle, with power outages lasting 8 to 12 hours even in major cities. Conditions are even more dire in rural areas. The political landscape is equally unstable. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan was ousted, arrested, and later released, igniting nationwide protests and violent confrontations between his supporters and the military. The Pakistani army, which has long exerted influence behind the scenes, is rapidly losing the public's trust, a troubling sign in a democracy as fragile as Pakistan's. Although the country narrowly avoided default in 2023 through a $3 billion IMF bailout, the relief was minimal. At one point, Pakistan's foreign reserves dipped below $4 billion, barely enough to cover a month's worth of imports. Perhaps most concerning of all, Pakistan's nuclear arsenal looms in the background of this unfolding crisis. If the nation descends further into chaos, the consequences won't be confined to South Asia, they'll be felt across the globe. Pakistan is in free fall, and the world can only wait to see if, how, or when it will recover. Number 3, Lebanon, once known as the Switzerland of the Middle East. Lebanon has now become one of the most financially devastated countries in the world. In just a few short years, Lebanon went from being a booming banking hub to a country where people can't even withdraw their own money from the bank. The economy has imploded, the currency has collapsed, and basic services are barely functioning. Lebanon's financial crisis began in 2019, when decades of corruption, sectarian politics, and unsustainable borrowing came to a head. The Lebanese pound has lost over 98% of its value. Since the crisis began, banks imposed strict limits on withdrawals, essentially locking ordinary citizens out of their own life, savings, And in a stunning turn, some desperate citizens even began robbing banks with fake guns, not to steal, but to access their own funds. Electricity in Lebanon is available for just a few hours a day, forcing people to rely on expensive and unreliable generators. Fuel shortages are rampant, inflation has pushed over 80% of the population below the poverty line, and the middle class has all but disappeared. The 2020 Beirut port explosion, one of the largest non-nuclear blasts in history, only made things worse, killing over 200 people and destroying billions in infrastructure. Years later, no one has been held accountable. The government is virtually paralyzed. Public services are crumbling. Doctors and professionals have fled en masse. Today, Lebanon isn't just facing a financial collapse. It's facing a collapse of hope, of trust, and of the very idea of a functioning state. Number 2. Haiti. Haiti is in a state of collapse so severe it barely qualifies as a functioning nation anymore. Once the first Black republic to win independence, Haiti today is ruled not by a government, but by gangs. Over 60% of the capital, Port-au-Prince, is now controlled by armed groups who rob, kidnap, rape, and kill. At will, the police are outnumbered, outgunned, and in many cases completely absent. Since the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in 2021, Haiti has had no elected president, no parliament, and virtually no national leadership. The country has become what some experts now call a de facto failed state. Haiti's economy has also cratered. Over 4.7 million Haitians face acute hunger. Inflation has soared past 40%, and the national currency continues to weaken. Fuel shortages are constant with depots under gang control. Hospitals can't operate, schools have shut down, and cholera has returned. Killing hundreds, the UN has warned that Haiti is experiencing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the Western Hemisphere, but international aid efforts are blocked by violence and lawlessness. Even the UN has been reluctant to send peacekeepers back, fearing a repeat of past missions that ended in disaster and scandal. Haiti is now trapped in a vicious cycle. Gang control prevents stabilization, while the lack of stability allows gangs to grow stronger. There are no simple solutions, and for the 11 million people living there, daily life has become a battle for survival. Number 1. Venezuela. At one time, Venezuela was the richest country in South America, blessed with the largest proven oil reserves in the world. Today, it's a country where people dig through garbage for food. Hospitals operate without basic supplies, and over 7 million citizens have fled in search of a better life. Venezuela's collapse began in the early 2000s under the rule of Hugo Chavez, and deepened under Nicolás Maduro populist policies, nationalization of industries, and the mismanagement of oil revenue combined with plummeting crude prices to send the economy into freefall. By 2018, inflation reached a staggering 1.7 million%. And the Venezuelan bolivar became worthless. People started weighing cash instead of counting it. At the peak of the crisis, a cup of coffee cost more than a month's salary. Power outages became common. Basic medicine disappeared, and malnutrition spread among children, even with oil prices recovering. Venezuela has struggled to bounce back due to US sanctions, corruption, and a destroyed industrial base. The government controls media, jails dissidents, and violently suppresses protests. In 2019, opposition leader Juan Guaido briefly declared himself interim president backed by the US and dozens of nations. But Maduro remained in power, propped up by military loyalty and foreign allies like Russia and Iran. Today, while the government claims the economy is stabilizing, life for ordinary Venezuelans remains bleak. Blackouts, food shortages, and rampant crime continue. Venezuela's collapse was not just economic, it was political, institutional, and deeply human.